All right, well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our first ever Tea Town Hall. I'm delighted that our first Tea Town Hall tonight will be hosted by Deputy Mayor Keith Blocker and Councilmember Kristina Walker. I'm also delighted to know that we have council members who have joined us this evening as well. We are so pleased to see so many of you joining us today, and we are excited to engage with you in this new virtual setting. Many of you have reached out to us to share your questions and concerns during COVID-19. And it became clear that there was a demand to come together and address some of the key issues that have been very prominent during this pandemic. The Tea Town Hall series is an opportunity for us to do that. Over the course of this series, we will take a deeper dive into some of the things that matter most to you: education and children, economic development, and issues impacting our family, friends, and neighbors who are immigrants. Tonight, our focus will be on the city's rental assistance program and how tenants can ensure their rights are protected during the Governor Jay Inslee's moratorium on eviction during this unprecedented time. Affordability and stability and secure housing was a crisis before COVID-19. And the economic instability brought by this virus has only heightened that crisis for many in our community. Doing what we can to stabilize families is an essential part of our efforts to protect and support public health. And I'm pleased that we were able to move quickly to launch our rental assistance program. In this time of great uncertainty, this is one small way that we can ease the worries of our impacted community members and provide some stability while they connect and expand the state and federal resources. Before we bring on our host this evening, there are a few technical pieces you need to know. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be made available for those who are not able to attend at this time. If you would like to ask a question, please look for the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Staff will be passing your questions on to the council members and other panelists throughout the evening. You can ask general questions or direct your questions to a specific council member, myself, or panelist. And with that, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Deputy Mayor Keith Blocker and Councilmember Kristina Walker.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Deputy Mayor Keith Blocker and your District 3 representative. It is great to see so many community members from all across our great city joining tonight. We are excited to be here today to provide you with more information about the resources that are available to you through the city of Tacoma as it pertains to the topic of rental assistance, tenant rights, and the governor's evictions moratorium during this COVID-19 crisis. We look forward to engaging you with this evening on a topic that I personally consider to be one of the most pressing issues that has emerged during this pandemic. I look forward to our conversation. Councilmember Kristina Walker.
Awesome, thank you. I am at-large Councilmember Kristina Walker. Thanks so much for joining us. If you do hear noises in the background, those are my kids. Like Deputy Mayor Blocker, I'm so happy that so many of you are able to join us tonight. I know I've heard from a number of people that since council meetings have moved online and are being shown virtually rather than in person, it's been difficult for residents to keep up with what we're doing, and we may not be as visible as we were before the stay home, stay healthy order. And as you can see, we are sheltering in place right along with you. But I want to assure you that City Council continues to meet and work hard for you, and so does city staff. Our meetings are being broadcast live on TV Tacoma, and the archived videos can be seen on the City Council meetings webpage, and you can also catch our meetings on Facebook Live. So back to you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Walker. Councilmember Walker, I can't see you. I just we have this new, there we go. All this new technology, you all, as you're getting used to it, so are we. Please remember, if you have a question to ask, please look for the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. And again, staff will be passing on your questions to myself, our council members, and other panelists. You can ask general questions or you can ask specific questions of us. That's why we're here this evening. And Deputy Mayor Blocker, I'll turn it back to you.
So we have some key subject matter experts here with us this evening. On details surrounding the rental assistance program. We have Allison Griffin from the Neighborhood and Community Service Department at the City of Tacoma. on how this program dovetails with the governor's eviction moratorium and tenant rights. We have Chiquetta Elder from the Office of Equity and Human Rights at the City of Tacoma, as well as Jim Bongard, Senior Policy Advisor to Governor Inslee. And with that, let's get started. Allison, can you please give us an overview of how the city's rental assistance program works?
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Blocker. As you said, I'm Allison Griffith, Assistant Director with Neighborhood and Community Services, here to speak on the city's rental assistance program. In order to prevent homelessness and housing instability, and directly related to the impacts of this pandemic, the city identified $1.2 million in Housing Trust Fund resources to make available for emergency rental assistance for Tacoma households. In order to qualify for the program, households need to be located in the city of Tacoma, have household income at or below 50% of the area median income for Pierce County, and be able to demonstrate a loss of income related to COVID-19. The city has divided its support of the program, with 55% of the funds being awarded through a lottery system. That application is currently open and will be open through May 6th. Once application closes, a random lottery selection will occur, and households who are selected will be contacted for follow-up documentation. Additional rounds of the lottery may open if funds are available. That application is available by visiting www.cityoftacoma.org/COVID-rent. Again, that's www.cityoftacoma.org/COVID-rent. Individuals who need assistance completing the online application may contact our provider, LASA, at 253-582-5320, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. In addition to that 55% of the funds being awarded through lottery, 45% of the funds have been made available for direct referral by community organizations working with persons of color in our community. If you are a representative of one of those community organizations and would like to make a direct referral, please contact LASA at communityengagement@lasawa.org, and they will provide a link for direct referral. Deputy Mayor Blocker, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Allison. I do have some follow-up questions. Why has the city committed to at least 45% of the funds going to people of color when everyone is struggling?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The city recognizes that COVID-19 has had an impact on all households. We also know from the Spark report that households of color in our community experience a disproportionate rate of homelessness and household instability. And recent data from the health department also indicates that persons of color are experiencing higher rates of infection from COVID-19. In keeping with the city's guiding principles on equity, we are providing assistance at a level that meets the highest need.
Thank you, Allison. And how does rental assistance help stabilize households in our city?
As we all know, families weighed down by housing costs may look to save money by skipping meals or visits to the doctor or by foregoing other essentials. Providing this assistance does allow families to focus resources on meeting other essential needs that they may have. It also keeps households in one place, avoiding costs associated with moving or paying deposits.
Thank you for that answer, Allison. Will a one-time payment help in the long term?
Yeah, Deputy Mayor Blocker, although the assistance is one time, allowing households to focus resources elsewhere allows them time to access additional benefits and resources as needed, and hopefully will give them time to return to employment.
Thank you for that answer. So the city has been working on the Affordable Housing Action Strategy. How would that help us in this as this situation evolves and more households are stressed by the impacts of COVID-19 on the health and the economy?
The Affordable Housing Action Strategy has a multi-pronged approach, including looking at focus areas on creation of new housing, keeping existing housing affordable and in good repair, helping community members stay in their current housing, and reducing barriers for those who often encounter them. Rental assistance is actually already included in the Affordable Housing Action Strategy as one leg of that kind of four-legged stool. Staff is hard at work under each of these strategies and have been meeting regularly with a broader advisory group of community members, nonprofit organizations, and business owners to think about the impacts of COVID-19 and look at ways that we may need to adjust the work we already have underway. You're correct that the current situation is evolving, and as more information becomes available, the team working on each of these strategies will continue to evaluate that approach and adjust as necessary.
Thank you, Allison. I appreciate your insight on this issue. Chiquetta, can you explain to us at a high level how the city's rental assistance program fits in with the tenants' rights program?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blocker. Although we know that the eviction moratorium provides some tenant protections and rights, and we'll hear more about that later, as far as tenants' rights go, I also want to remind tenants that they also have responsibilities under the Residential Landlord Tenant Act and their lease agreements. So one of the most important things for tenants to remember is that their inability to pay rent during this time has to be directly related to COVID-19, and it does not waive their rights for their obligation to pay rent. So tenants will eventually have to pay their rent. So if they can pay something, it's important that they do so, so they won't end up with a huge outstanding bill in the end. And another thing that is important for tenants to remember during this time is to communicate with your landlord. It's important that you put those your communication in writing and serve it in a way that you can prove your landlord received it. Excuse me. This will be important in informing your landlord of your financial situation and also notifying your landlord, for instance, if there's any violations under the eviction moratorium. For example, if your landlord serves you with a notice that's restricted prior to June 4th, then what you need to do is put something in writing to the landlord, letting them know it violates the moratorium. And then after that, if the landlord still does not rescind the notice, then you can contact the Attorney General's office and file a complaint. So that communication is going to be very key in tenants' rights and their responsibilities, because tenants, although they have a lot of rights under the law, they still have responsibilities, and paying the rent is one. So that's why the city's rental assistance program is another resource for tenants, so that we can help ensure that they don't run the risk of becoming homeless.
Perfect. Thank you, Chiquetta. Jim, can you provide a brief overview of the governor's eviction moratorium?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I can. So I'm Jim Baumgart, Senior Policy Advisor to the Governor. I serve as his Policy Advisor on Human Services. I have been with him since 2013. So as everyone's aware, this pandemic has resulted in a sustained global economic slowdown. And most clearly, this is experienced in the layoff and the substantially reduced work hours. And that's evidenced by more than 500,000 unemployment assistance applications over the last 3 weeks, as well as applications for benefits administered by the Department of Social and Health Services, such as food assistance programs, that have tripled over that same period of time. This slowdown has resulted in the inability to pay rent by those members of our workforce, and that increases the likelihood of evictions from their homes, increasing the life and health and safety risks to a significant population in our state. The current proclamation, 20-19.1, extends and amends the original proclamation on evictions enacted by the governor on March 18th. These prohibitions within the proclamation remain in effect until June 4th, and they include landlords and property owners and property managers are prohibited from serving or threatening to serve or enforce any notice to pay or vacate, a notice of unlawful detainer, a notice of determination or termination of rental, or notice to comply or vacate for any dwelling, except for reasons of health and safety. Additionally, landlords, property owners, and property managers are prohibited from seeking or enforcing or threatening to enforce judicial eviction orders or agreements to vacate any dwelling, again, except for reasons of health and safety. Law enforcement officers are prohibited from serving or threatening to serve eviction orders affecting any dwelling, again, except for health and safety reasons. Landlords and property owners and property managers are prohibited from assessing or threatening to assess late fees or other charges for the non-payment or late payment due to COVID pandemic after February 29th. Landlords, property owners, property managers are prohibited from assessing rent or other charges related to a dwelling during the period when the resident's access to that dwelling and the occupancy was presented as a result of the outbreak. They're also prohibited from treating any unpaid rent or any charges related to a dwelling as an enforceable debt that is owing to collection where such non-payment was a result from the COVID outbreak. Where this does not apply is if a tenant was offered and refused or failed to comply with a reasonable repayment plan that was based on the individual circumstances. And finally, there's a prohibition on increasing or threatening to increase rent on dwellings as well as commercial properties that are materially affected by the COVID outbreak. And this applies to rent increases that were programmed to take effect during this period, but were scheduled or enacted prior to, or were scheduled prior to the April 16th proclamation. At this time, those planned rent increases are suspended. I would encourage everyone to please go read the proclamation in its entirety. I've sent the link there because this is a highlight of the 7 key elements of the proclamation, but it really is important that people read it in its entirety. The governor invoked his prohibitory power under RCW 43.06.220 subsection 1. This is different than his authority to waive statutes and regulations. Again, important to understand the difference between the two and the authority that the governor has in making this proclamation. I'd like to thank Shaketa for early on talking about tenants, residents, and renters who are not materially affected by the COVID pandemic should and must continue to pay their rent to avoid any unnecessary and avoidable economic hardship to landlords, property owners, and property managers.
Perfect.
If there's any questions, Deputy Mayor, at this time, I think I can, or any further questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Jim. So I do have a few follow-up questions for both you and Chiquetta. Can you please elaborate on a few things? First question is, why is the moratorium on evictions important to stabilizing families?
So, Shaketa, is it okay if I try to answer this one?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so I think there's a couple of key things that are important to note, and I'll take them in just the order that they came to mind. Kids lose up to 3 months of education attainment every time they move. And families and school districts have been working so hard to maintain contact with children and maintain that education attainment that it's very, very critical that we keep that. And to move them, this has a profound effect on grade attainment and education for our children. So that's one that hits close to home for a lot of parents. It's very expensive for families to move, and the cost of just moving and finding a new place in that process is expensive to families. But I'd also like to point out, it's expensive to landlords as well. It takes time and money to turn over an apartment, and it's an unnecessary expense at this point in time. And then finally, I think this eviction really is, it speaks to the governor's desire to really have the stay home, stay healthy order stay in effect, and the necessity of stopping unnecessary movement. If people don't have to move and don't have to be about and don't have to be moving their property and everything they own and putting it in a truck and trying to find a new place, then we should try to avoid that if we can.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim. This question here is for Chiquetta. Is the city considering other policies to protect people from losing their homes?
Well, I cannot speak to whether or not the mayor and council will decide to enact other policies around eviction. I can say that from a staff perspective, I believe that the governor's expanded moratorium addresses the concerns that have been voiced from callers to the City of Tacoma's landlord tenant program after the first moratorium went into effect.
Thank you, Chiquetta. How can landlords and tenants stay up to date on changes happening at the state and the local level?
One of the things that they can do is to watch the governor's daily press conferences. I've watched a lot of press conferences lately, something I had never done in the past, but they've been very informative. They can also check the Attorney General's website because they keep that up to date. But then also to find out on a local level, the City of Tacoma, we do press releases, and we also have updated information on our website, which is www.cityoftacoma.org. So those are some of the ways that people can stay up to date on changes at both the state and the local level.
Thank you for that, Chiquetta. Why is it important for landlords and tenants to communicate about situations and needs during this time?
Okay, it's one of the things, it's very important for them to communicate during this time for a number of reasons. First, the moratorium, for the moratorium, if the tenant is unable to pay their rent and is directly related to COVID-19, the tenant is obligated to provide this information to the landlord. And then secondly, the moratorium states that before a landlord can treat unpaid rent as an enforceable debt or move towards evictions, they have to show that the tenant was offered and defaulted on a reasonable repayment plan. So it's important to note that the reasonable repayment plan is based on the individual tenant's financial health and ability to pay. So therefore, what is reasonable, in order for that to be considered, there needs to be a dialogue between both parties, because that's the only way you're going to figure out what works for both parties.
Thank you, Chiquetta and Jim. You've given us a lot to think about today. And with that, Councilmember Walker, shall we open things up and have questions from the community?
Yeah, sounds good. We've already had some questions rolling in, so let's open it up to questions from the community. Mayor, do you want to remind folks how to?
That's my job. I get to remind everybody. If you want to ask a question, please look at the Q&A button on the bottom of your Zoom window. Again, staff's going to be passing those questions to our council members and other panelists throughout the evening. So don't forget, bottom of your screen, and it's the Q&A button. So with that, let's get started with the questions, Councilmember Walker.
All right, thank you. And thank you to our panelists for being here. We have such a wealth of information here. So I'm gonna grab the questions from the audience and then direct them towards one of our panelists. So bear with us as we mute and unmute. So a couple questions that came in here really quickly. What about landlords? They need to make a living too. And I think there are elements of this on all of your plates. So Jim, do you wanna talk about that with the governors?
As Jim is coming on, can I just add one thing in answer to that question? Yeah. And that is the fact that the payments that will be made from the city's rental assistance program, those checks will be going directly to landlords. And so one of the ways that we're helping landlords is to make sure that we're putting that rental assistance money in the pocket of our landlords. So that is one way that we're helping landlords. Jim, sorry, I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you. There's that. And we've had this conversation. And one thing I did forget to add on the bottom of that, also in that proclamation and elsewhere, is the need to have that relationship between tenant and landlord. And in many cases, it's a very good relationship. And for those that can work an agreement and make a partial payment or pay what they can as they can to work through this and not incur that large amount of debt. The governor again encouraged that in the proclamation, and I think landlords and tenants have that relationship and have that dialogue, can do that. We've also had this was our second meeting with various property managers and landlords associations about what does a long-term recovery plan look like on this. The length of the moratorium is only going to be part of what we have to deal with. There's a much longer period that we have to look at with regards to, what does a longer recovery period look like? And that is part of that conversation is going to be around kind of how do we work closely with landlords to find a solution that does work with them to help us maintain that relationship and those units, quite honestly, and maintain the available housing stock that we need across this state.
Great, thank you, Jim and Mayor. Allison, I have 2 questions coming at you, so if you have anything to add to that one, feel free to jump in. But I've got 2 questions about the rental assistance program for you. Anything to add on that one?
No, I appreciate the Mayor's reminder that those payments are going directly to landlords. So thank you, Mayor, for that. And Councilmember, I'm ready for the questions when you are.
Okay, so one is a direct follow-up to that. Have the funds from the city's rental assistance program been doled out to landlords yet? If not, when might Tacoma tenants expect to see that take effect?
Yeah, so as a reminder, the application for lottery closes on the 6th of May, which is next Wednesday. So after that, the random lottery selection will occur. And then we expect it may take about 15 weeks to get through all of those applications and complete the funding process.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Allison, how many weeks?
15, Mayor. So that's processing 100 applications per week with 6 staff members doing that processing. It's quite a bit of back and forth with both tenants and the landlord to confirm that we have all the necessary information to do those releases appropriately.
So stay with me, Allison. The next ones are for you as well. Are immigrants without documentation eligible for the rental assistance program?
Thank you, Councilmember. And yes, they are. Again, what folks need to be able to demonstrate is that they reside in the city of Tacoma, that they have household income at or below 50% of the area median income, and that they've lost employment as a result of COVID-19. So that can include things like a letter from their employer, right? So doesn't necessarily need to be an application for unemployment assistance or anything like that, although that would also qualify. Importantly, the city is not going to be sharing, we're not collecting, nor will we be sharing any information with regards to immigration or citizenship status, particularly with our immigrations and customs enforcement folks. That's in keeping with the city's welcoming cities policy.
Great. Shaquetta, anything to add on that one?
No.
Okay, thanks. Allison, I've got one more for you here. Why, and also maybe this is something that you want to add to as well, Mayor, why is the city using a lottery system for the distribution of funding?
Thank you, Councilmember, and I'm happy to defer to the Mayor if she would like to address that, but I can
Go ahead, Allison.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So the city has selected a lottery system because we do imagine that we will get more applications than we have available funding for. We understand from an equity perspective that folks may not be able to, when we open that application period, they may not have been able to access a computer right at 8 o'clock in the morning on the first day we opened. So in order to introduce fairness into that process and make sure that we're providing an opportunity for everyone to access the funds equally, that's why we've selected a lottery system.
She answered it.
Okay, perfect. And this one is for either of our city staff. Is the city going to publish stats on how the rental assistance funding is being allocated, such as who is receiving it to ensure accountability?
I will start with that one, Councilmember Walker, and then if Chiquita or anyone else on the call has anything to add, please feel free. But yes, Council is receiving at present a weekly update regarding how many applications we have received. And as we move through the process, once the lottery is conducted, we will continue to provide updates about where that assistance has gone and what those program demographics look like.
Councilmember Walker, I don't have anything to add to that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'm gonna pause right here. We had a couple of questions on very specifics. Where do I apply? What is the phone number and the deadline? So if Allison, I know you've said that, if you would repeat that just really quickly, I know we're coming up on the May 6th deadline. That's the one I've committed to memory, but you'll have to help me with the phone number that you mentioned.
Absolutely, council member. So I will repeat those a couple more times slowly. Great. For folks to write down. And then I believe that staff will also be doing a follow-up document with this meeting that will provide those links as well. So in order to apply, residents should visit www.cityoftacoma.org/COVID rent. Again, one more time, www.cityoftacoma.org/COVID rent. And if you need assistance completing the application, which includes translation assistance for residents who may not speak English as a first language, please contact LASA at 253-582-5320. Again, that's 253-582-5320. And they are staffing phone lines Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon.
Great, thank you. Mayor, I'm gonna send this one your way. Does the city anticipate dedicating any more funding on top of the initial 1.2 million for the rental assistance program?
That is absolutely our goal. As we look at CARES Act funding and other federal funding that's coming in, many of you know that, or many of you may or may not know that when the federal government decided to do the CARES Act, they only gave money directly to cities of 500,000 or above. So our county was able to be funded. I'm sorry, somebody's mowing the lawn. Our county was funded, and they're looking at finding ways to assist. We are still working with the potential fourth stimulus package and trying to make sure that we get money down to cities who are smaller than 500,000. And it is our goal, whatever funding we can find, that we will be putting more towards rental assistance. In terms of finding more money in our general fund budget right now, I have to be honest with everybody and tell you that the COVID-19 pandemic has not just hit families and all the residents in Tacoma, but it has hit the government as well. And we are facing a $40 million deficit because we get money from sales tax and B&O tax, which is business and operational tax. So we will be looking for other ways to continue to fund this, but know that we are fighting hard and we'll try to find more funding as it becomes available.
Great. Thank you, and I know that the rest of the council is right there with you to work towards finding more funds, especially for rental housing assistance. Okay, so a couple other questions on the distribution of funds. Will funds be set aside for the elderly and disabled on fixed incomes? And if so, would staff be addressing that, or council, and how?
At present, Councilmember Walker, there's not a specific set aside for individuals who may identify as elderly or disabled, or low income is the threshold, of course, for anyone applying for the funds. So at present, that is not a specific designation. However, as both the mayor indicated, as we may look for additional resource for rental assistance, as well as we may or may not get a number of applications to fill our current funding availability, we can look at additional rounds, and that is something we may consider at that time.
Great, thank you. All right, and if people have questions on the translation services, or if they need translation services for applying, where do they call?
Again, they can call LASA Monday through Friday from 10 to noon. And that phone number again is 253-582-5320. LASA has been provided access to the city's teletranslation services, and so can connect to an interpreter at that time to assist with that.
Great, thank you. And I know we are looking to our community partners to get that word out to our other languages, or in our other languages, I should say. So Allison, you had mentioned earlier on the timeline that it was 15 weeks to get dollars out the door. This question is specific about how soon will people be contacted with a decision on whether or not they win the lottery or not?
Right, so the lottery will be conducted when the application closes, so on May 7th. And at that time, LASA will begin to contact individuals who have both received funding as well as individuals who have not necessarily been selected for award, to notify them that they will be placed on a waiting list, because as we talked about, there is some additional documentation that still needs to be collected. And then if they further are not selected off that wait list, we have also worked with the Metropolitan Development Council, who has available funding from their LIHEAP program, to be able to accept those applications should folks voluntarily want to provide their information.
Great, thank you. And just a reminder, if you have questions, to continue sending them in. We're getting a good stream of them. But send in your questions, and even if we don't get to all of them tonight, we will answer them and post them online. So you can never ask too many questions, so keep them coming. Just a quick question to clarify, what does LASA stand for?
Thank you, Councilmember Walker. That's the Living Access Support Agency, and they are a organization the city has worked with to provide other homeless prevention services, including rental assistance in the past.
Great. Great, and I'll open this question up to everybody on the panel, including my colleagues. Speaking of other organizations, I know there are many organizations working in the community on rental assistance and housing support. Are there other resources that where people, if they aren't picked in the lottery, or if they need other types of services, other places where folks can go, and or maybe a central location for those kind of things?
I'll start chime in. One way to find out all those resources in one place would be calling the United Way line at 211. And United Way has done a really good job of bringing together all of the resources, especially during the COVID-19, and even on their website. UWPC, that's UnitedWayOfPierceCounty.org, is another great website to go and find all of the resources. But again, if you can't get it anywhere else, 211 is a really great place to call to find all of that information in one place.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Walker, I like to just add that the Attorney General's website has a list of resources, both for not only tenants, but homeowners and landlords too. So they have a list of resources available on their website. It explains things like the federal protections and different programs that might be available to homeowners. So the Attorney General's website has a collective list of resources there.
Great. Thank you. We'll get all these posted when we post this on the city website too, so people have access to those. Jim, anything to add from the state side of things?
No, I think most of our programs are actually pushed through the Department of Commerce and managed at the county and the local level.
Okay, great.
Right.
All right, we've got a question about how people can donate to help to support the city's rental assistance fund. Can people contribute?
Thank you, Councilmember. You know, that is not a question that has come up at this point, so we will look into that and follow up with folks offline.
Great, and thank you for that question, whoever asked that. I really appreciate seeing the generosity of our community come through. Mayor,
And by Monday, Councilmember Walker, we will have a place for people to make donations.
Great, thank you. All right, with the first month being a crisis period for renters, can you elaborate more on how the waiting list is managed? I think this one's back to you, Allison.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And again, folks will receive a notification if and when they are selected or not selected, and be told, you know, it is dependent, of course, on other applications that were selected for award and the processing time for those applications. So after that, we'll take them off the top of the list. Again, residents will also have the option to voluntarily have their application and information provided to the Metropolitan Development Council should they like to seek rental assistance through that program as well at that time.
Great. Great. Thank you for that. All right, Mayor, I've got one for you. Let's see, it's scrolling up. Okay. What are some of the things that the mayor and council are doing at the state and federal level to help the community and get resources for us? I know you touched on this a little bit, but
glad to talk about it. So we'll start with tenant protections that went into place, and the fact that the governor issued a statewide moratorium on evictions. That started with Tacoma. While other cities were doing it and we were looking at doing it, I continued to lean on the governor to ask him to take it statewide so that everyone could have protection. So we are in constant contact with the governor's office as well as our federal delegation. We have at least 3 calls a week with the governor's office. And so I'm continuously, either myself or through staff, are continuing to advocate for what we need here in Tacoma. You may have heard that through our negotiation partnership with Associated of Washington Cities, we were able to get the governor to release some of the CARES money. Again, we didn't get any directly as a city of under 500,000, but the governor will be releasing money to cities from the CARES Act. So that will bring about $6.3 million. And it has to be used for things that are that we did not budget for, so it has to be used for all things COVID related. But that's one thing we're doing. We're also in touch with our federal delegation constantly. I just had a call a couple of days ago with Senator Patty Murray, who's telling us how hard she's fighting and how we can support her in trying to get money down to the local level, because we know best what our community needs. And so we are, if you turn into any of our council meetings, every week it seems we are all signing on to a letter advocating on your behalf. Deputy Mayor Blocker led the charge. Although I'd been talking to the governor, he led the charge to get us we got a letter drafted that we all signed on to, and asked the governor not just to consider eviction moratorium, but to actually look at fines and fees as well. And the governor responded and came out with that guidance. So we are continuously in contact with our legislators and continuing to advocate on behalf of Tacoma.
I would echo that about our federal delegation. They're working really hard and talking to all of us, asking us what we need on the ground. They've been really fantastic. And all of our federal delegations, so Representative Derek Kilmer, Senator Murray, and Senator Cantwell, all have newsletters. If you're not on that, that's a great way to find out what's coming down to the local level. And they're really, really fantastic. What's that?
And I would also add, we have 2 more representatives, Congressman Adam Smith and Congressman Debbie Heck.
Thank you.
So, and they're all hosting weekly calls with us, asking us, telling us what we need to know and asking us. And the other thing I'll just add, we are also members of the National League of Cities, the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And so all of these partnerships are putting the pressure on states and the federal government so that we can get what we need in Tacoma.
Great. Anything to add on that, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Councilmember Walker. No, I just appreciate all the efforts that have come from my colleagues. Our mayor has done a tremendous job at advocating for the residents of the city of Tacoma, and just is going through these tough times. It was all very difficult, challenging times, but I really appreciate that people are leading with their hearts, right? People are stepping up, and we're taking service to the next level when it comes to advocating and supporting. Right now, our mayor just let the community know that we're looking at a $40 million deficit, and while at the same time we're working really hard to find the resources to ensure that people can stay in their homes. And this is kind of related to housing, but most recently we just allotted an additional $1.4 million for our tenant assistance program. So working very closely with Tacoma Public Utilities, we're able to find the resources to additionally help people be more sustained in their homes and not have to worry about utility shutoffs and figuring out ways that we could provide more resources to the residents and families in our community. So I just applaud the efforts that all of my colleagues have taken in terms of stepping up to support the residents of Tacoma.
Great, thanks. Mayor, I'm going to ask this question of you. The question is around the stability of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So is the 1.2 million being used the same funding that was used to seed that program?
It was. We did make a decision. We had put $1.2 million into the Housing Trust Fund, and that was to seed our Housing Trust Fund. However, in this COVID-19 environment, we had to make some decisions. The great thing about the $1.2 million is that we put it in and it was unrestricted. We could decide to move it around. What I'm happy to report, as many of you may remember, is that last year, the state gave us the ability to access $1,406. And what that is that's part of the sales tax that is collected that can actually come back to us. And it is focused only on building affordable housing. And so while we did move that $1 million to address this crisis, we will have money coming in that will continue to seed our fund. So we will be able to still work on housing projects in Tacoma.
Great. And if you don't know, I believe 1406 is the bill number, right, that we always refer to?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I say 1406 so easily. Yes, thank you. It was a bill that was passed by the state legislature, giving counties and cities the authority to accept the bill, and then we could actually collect. We can collect sales tax dollars. It doesn't increase. So let me be very clear to citizens. It did not increase your sales tax. We get to take some of the sales tax that the state was collecting and use that for affordable housing in our community. So thank you, Councilmember.
Yeah. One more reason to shop local.
Absolutely.
So we have a repeat question here, but I think it's a really important one. So Allison, this is back to the structure of the rental housing, asking about getting rental assistance regardless of status and our undocumented residents in our community. So I think it's worth repeating. Somebody said they just joined.
Absolutely. So thank you, Councilmember Walker. I'm happy to repeat that information. Importantly, the application does not request or require any documentation with regards to someone's citizenship or immigration status. And folks, again, the only documentation that is required to be presented is demonstration of residency in the city of Tacoma, demonstration of household income at or below 50% of the area median income for Pierce County, and demonstration of the loss of employment related to COVID-19, which can include things just as simple as a letter from your employer. It does not necessarily need to be an application for unemployment or anything like that. Importantly, the city has stated that we will not be sharing any information with regards to immigration or citizenship status with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement as a result of people's application to the program.
Great, thank you. I think that's such a fantastic part of this program and really important that people know. Mayor, you mentioned a $6.3 million expecting to come from the CARES Act through the state. Is that all going to rental assistance programs or to other COVID-related costs? The parameters have not been set yet as to how we get the money, and that's an estimate. We don't know for sure. But when we get that letter from the governor and understand how it works, one of the things that we're talking about is that would be a cost reimbursement kind of grant, which will be difficult for us to do if we don't get that money directly in order to provide rental assistance and more small business assistance. So all those details haven't been worked out. But if we get the money directly, obviously the council would have an opportunity to direct some of that funding to rental assistance. And I think you have a council who would be more than willing to do that. I also remind everybody that we have a lot of people who are hurting in our community. There's rental assistance, there's business assistance. There are just so many people in need. There's food insecurity.
So, and that $6 million could be gone just like that. And so know that we will be, if we get that money directly, we will be looking at how to best use it and how to best support our community. And obviously we believe rental system is one of the ways to do that.
Great. Allison, I think I've got one more logistical question for you here, and I'm not sure that we know the answer to this yet. Somebody asked that if you aren't selected in the first round of funding, and then if there is another round, would you have to reapply for that assistance when the funding is available?
Thank you, Councilmember Walker. What we've discussed at this point with our provider is actually that we would just put those folks on the waiting list back into the lottery. And if something changes regarding that, we will make sure to communicate it clearly.
Okay, great. Great, thank you for that. So that's, looks like we're just about at the end of our questions here. I want to make sure that we all selecteds share our contact information so people know how to get a hold of us. And I think that may be in everyone's closing remarks. Before we head to closing remarks, I just wanted to ask my colleagues, Deputy Mayor and Mayor, if you had any other questions for the panel that have come up in the course of this conversation.
None for me. I think citizens asked a great amount of questions. Just know that this is not your only opportunity to ask questions. If something comes up or you have concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to LASA, as we've given you their number. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. Again, if you don't remember all the numbers to call us 311. You can call that number for general information. If you forgot everything we told you tonight, you could always call 311.
Great. So 311 is to the city and 211 is to the United Way. If you have those, you're good. You're good. All right. Well, then let's, I want to thank the panelists, and I'll kick it over to Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Walker. I want to thank all of you in the community for joining us tonight and asking your questions. I also want to thank Allison, Chiquetta, and Jim for participating. We're very lucky in the city to have such dedicated and knowledgeable staff serving our residents. We understand this is a challenging time for many of you in our listening audience. I also believe there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and we need to keep moving forward together. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time at keith.blocker@cityoftacoma.org. Remember, if you are in need of rental assistance, the deadline to apply for the program is May 6th. And just wanted to say, you know, again, we're going through some difficult times. This is all new to every one of us, including government. All of my colleagues, again, I just want to reiterate that, you know, we're staying home, we're staying safe, we're doing the things to, you know, protect our families while you're doing all the work that you need to do to protect your families and your relatives. And, you know, again, if you need anything, you have any concerns, feel free to reach out to us. I truly appreciate the commitment that comes from our mayor and our governor and all my colleagues, all the city staff. I just want to highlight the efforts that they're all doing every day to help the residents of our city stay safe and be healthy. Again, this is some challenging times, and we're just asking everyone to be patient with us. If we're not able to respond to you fast enough, we're getting, you know, hundreds of emails a day with people who are concerned and have questions. And we're doing the best we can do with our budgets to make sure that we provide the resources and services to all the residents in Tacoma. So again, thank you all for engaging us this evening. Really appreciate the efforts of our staff for setting this up. It took a lot of work for us to even do this town hall through the internet. And I just want to let you all know that you have representatives that truly care about the well-being of the people in our city. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I also wanted to thank the panelists, Chiquetta, Allison, thank you for all of your work in pulling this together. And Jim, for joining us. I know your schedule is incredibly busy at the state level. Thank you so much for making the time for us. And I also wanted to give a shout out, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but the man behind the curtain, Kenny, for making all this happen and feeding all the great questions. Wouldn't have happened without you. So thanks for pulling this together. I'm really excited that my colleagues will continue to do these town hall sessions. As Deputy Mayor said, you can always reach out to me, Kristina.walker@cityoftacoma.org. I know it is harder to find us these days as everyone's sheltering in place and working from home and counseling from home. But we really do love to hear from you. And we are meeting twice a week now, so listen in, and everything, all of our meetings are recorded, so you can go back and check them out too. So I'm happy to help people navigate that process too, if they're just interested in learning more about how to listen in to the council or learn more about what we're working on. And we're figuring it out day by day too, with some of the details on the committees and things like that. So I also wanted to just take the moment to thank our frontline employees and first responders, and especially because this is my area of work, is to thank our bus drivers who are getting people around the city on a daily basis and getting people where they need to go. So with that, I'll kick it over to you, Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Walker and Deputy Mayor. Thank you for your leadership and your willingness to go first. Like I said, this is the first of a series of T-Town halls. So I want to thank the both of you for stepping up, for being very concerned about this issue and taking the lead to make this happen. So I'm grateful to the both of you. I agree. I want to thank all the panelists for being here tonight and for providing this information. Residents in Tacoma, if you ever doubted the skills and ability and commitment of your city employees, I can guarantee you now is not the time. I can guarantee you that our city employees are showing up, whether it's at home because they're working from home, or whether they're picking up your garbage every day, or they're your police or your firefighters, or they're making sure the traffic lights are still working. We have some amazing employees at the city of Tacoma. So I too want to thank our media communications department, but just everyone who's going above and beyond to really help our community. So whether you work for the city, or whether you work for general government or you work for Tacoma Public Utilities, we are grateful for your work. I would be remiss if I didn't also thank the leader, the one who really is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the city with our guidance, and that's our city manager, Elizabeth Pauley. I do also want to thank, our governor. I want to thank our governor for his leadership. And I want to thank him for sending Jim to be with us tonight. The governor really has made some strides for our state, and if we are experiencing, we can even begin to use the word success in flattening the curve with this virus. We are all doing our part locally, but the governor, he set the example and he set the guidelines. So I want to remind all of us, although this is difficult and there are darker days sometimes, as Deputy Mayor said, there is light at the end of the tunnel and we will get there. But the reason that we see the amount of cases going down and the deaths going down is because what we're doing is working. So please just remember that. Keep doing what you've been doing. It's probably going to be a little bit longer, but in the end, what you're doing will actually save lives, and we're depending on all of us to do that. I'm grateful to be here, and again, my heartfelt thanks to the two of you. This again is the beginning of a series, so every Thursday at 6 p.m. For the next 4 weeks at least, and if we have more to talk about, we'll talk about extending it, but for the next 4 weeks at least, every Thursday night at 6 o'clock, we will be having these T-Town halls. Again, next week we'll be talking about immigration and our friends and neighbors who really need our support. And then we'll be talking about economic development and education and families. So please tune in. If you've got questions that didn't get answered tonight, again, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And if you ever want to talk to me or share a thought with me, I'm simple, mayor@cityoftacoma.org. And if you need any more information, the cityoftacoma.org. If you get to that point, you can just click on the link, and there's a COVID-19 link, and it'll take you to all of our information about COVID. I'm going to ask one more thing. Someone asked tonight, where can they donate? And that's why I'm so encouraged about this time, because there was someone who actually called in who wanted to help, as all of you have. And so I'm asking you all, we want to begin to collect your stories and hear about the great ways that things are happening in our community. So if you have a story to tell or know of someone who's doing great things on their own in this COVID time, I'm asking you to send in your email with your story. And you can send that email to compassion@cityoftacoma.org. Just the word compassion @cityoftacoma.org. We want to hear your stories, and we want to understand even more deeply what we already know to exist, and that is the fact that we have amazing people who live in our city. We have an amazing community, and we want to hear more of those stories. We are stronger together. We are Compassionate Tacoma, and we will get through this, because we'll get through this together, and we'll be stronger because of it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening.